Video on carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, and what they do. Carbs, are they bad for you? No and yes. Now, before we can really go in depth into why no and yes, we have to answer the question, what exactly are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are an essential part of a diet, of everyone's diet. What they do, they provide energy. And you need energy for working out, for exactly what you're doing, for exercising, for picking up dumbbells, putting dumbbells down, for hitting bags. You need energy to do that. You need energy to run, you need energy, right? Now, carbohydrates, they are an essential macronutrient. Remember your three big macronutrients. You have proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are broken down into sugars. They're molecules that break down into sugars. Now, the way that they break down varies depending on which carbohydrates. Now, there's two different carbohydrates. There's a simple carbohydrate and there's a complex carbohydrate. Let's talk about simple carbohydrates first. So, simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are a short sugar chain. They have a short sugar chain. They can break down a little bit easier. Simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates have a shorter sugar chain. They break down a little bit easier, or a little bit faster, I should say, and they have a high glycemic index, meaning that they hit your bloodstream a lot faster, actually. Now, what these simple sugars are, they're soda, candy, not so great stuff for you. It doesn't do that much for you, and that's why it gives you a short burst of energy. So that's where you hear that sugar rush a term come from. It's because it's hitting your bloodstream so fast that you're gonna get a sudden burst of energy, but then you tend to crash afterwards. But let's go back to those big words, the high glycemic index. Now, the high glycemic index, where it means that it hits your blood really fast and it raises your blood pressure up. Now, carbohydrates do raise your blood pressure up a little bit, but depending on which carbohydrate it is, it might raise it up a little bit higher than another one. Now, simple carbohydrates actually raise your blood sugar up quite a bit. Now, what ends up happening if you abuse this and you're eating a lot of simple carbohydrates, what ends up happening is that you can start to put yourself at risk for heart disease, diabetes, heart attacks, and all these health risks are coming into play, especially if you start abusing simple carbohydrates. Just to break it down a little bit more, your body produces insulin to kind of even this out. And what can end up happening if you're taking too many simple carbohydrates in, your body can go through something called insulin resistance. And when that starts to happen, that's when all these diseases start to come up. And actually, 32% of the United States currently suffer from insulin resistance and suffer from these high-risk diseases where you're getting heart attacks, you're getting type 2 diabetes, you're getting all these diseases that you shouldn't have just from simple carbohydrates. So the simple carbohydrates are actually something that we do want to stay away from. So when you hear carbs are bad, that's what you want to stay away from, are the simple carbohydrates, the sugars, the candies, the sodas, anything like that. Just because it's not going to really do anything for you, and it's a slippery slope, to getting diseases that you don't want to have. So let's talk about complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates have a low glycemic index. We just talked about the glycemic index of the simple carbohydrates, but complex carbohydrates have a low glycemic index, meaning that it releases into your blood a little bit slower, meaning that your blood pressure tends to not climb as high as a simple carbohydrate. Now, complex carbohydrates do a lot for you. They produce a longer lasting energy, and again, you need energy to exercise. Your body burns energy. in order for you to work out. And that's how you burn fat, and that's how you gain muscle, and that's how you start to make progress. But what are complex carbohydrates? Now, complex carbohydrates would be rices, your sweet potatoes, your fibrous carbohydrates that you can have. That means your body passes through them differently. You'll get a longer lasting energy. Instead of a quick short burst, you get a longer lasting energy with those complex carbohydrates. You want to get your quinoas in, you want to get your rices in, you want to get your fibrous carbohydrates in, your oats, all that good stuff in. Now, complex carbohydrates, they are a longer chain of sugar. So they burn differently than the simple carbohydrate does. So in summary, your simple carbohydrates, they are a shorter sugar chain, I should say, and they burn faster, and it raises your blood pressure, and over time, overdoing simple sugars or simple carbohydrates, it can lead to heart disease, heart attacks, type 2 diabetes, and a lot of bad stuff that we don't want. While complex carbohydrates don't raise your blood pressure as much, which doesn't necessarily lead to these diseases that you don't want to have. Instead, it actually gives you longer lasting energy that you're going to need for your workouts, and it gives you more bang for your buck. So you want to stick to the complex carbohydrates. Both of them do raise your blood sugar level, but one takes it a little bit too high, while the other one gives you enough so that you can get through your day, get through your workouts, and live a healthy lifestyle. So you want to stick to those complex carbohydrates. Both of them do rise that blood sugar level, but you want to stick to the good stuff. You always want your food to do something for you. You want to eat with a purpose. You never just want to eat, right? While, the sugary stuff, it might taste a little bit better at times, depending on who you are and, your taste buds, you want to stick to your complex carbohydrates because that's what's going to be best for you in the end. I hope this video helped and answered a lot of questions about carbohydrates. Not all carbohydrates are bad. You don't have to avoid them like the plague. This has been David from La Quinta. Peace out.